Schindler's List wasn't just Spielberg's Holocaust film, it was the project that nearly broke him, transforming the blockbuster director into a haunted chronicler of history's darkest chapter. Behind the camera, crew members collapsed in tears, actors suffered nightmares, and Spielberg himself needed daily phone calls with Robin Williams just to find moments of laughter amid the crushing weight of recreating genocide. The film we witness on screen came at a devastating emotional cost to everyone involved. Today, we're diving into 15 shocking behind-the-scenes facts about Schindler's List that reveal the extraordinary lengths taken to create this masterpiece. And stick around for our final fact, the heart-wrenching truth about the film's most disturbing scene that Spielberg has rarely discussed. Let's begin. 1. Spielberg initially refused to direct it. Steven Spielberg didn't want to make Schindler's List, not because he didn't believe in the story, but because he didn't trust himself to tell it. When Universal first acquired the rights to Thomas Keneally's book in 1982, Spielberg was offered the director's chair but immediately declined. "I didn't think I was ready, either as a filmmaker or as a person," he later admitted. Not once, but 3 times he attempted to hand the project to other directors. First Roman Polanski, a Holocaust survivor himself, then Martin Scorsese, and finally Billy Wilder. For over a decade, Spielberg wrestled with his insecurities while the script gathered dust. It wasn't until he finished Jurassic Park that Spielberg finally felt the weight of responsibility. If not now, he asked himself, then when? 2. Ralph Fiennes gained 28 pounds and studied Nazi footage to become Amon Goeth. To become one of cinema's most chilling villains, Ralph Fiennes didn't just act, he transformed. The naturally lean actor gained 28 pounds to match the heavy-set Nazi commandant. He shaved his head. He studied footage of concentration camp officers. But the physical changes were just the beginning. Fiennes immersed himself in Nazi ideology, reading their literature and listening to Hitler's speeches on repeat. "I wanted to understand how a human being could justify such actions," Fiennes said. Not to sympathize, but to comprehend the mentality. The transformation was so complete that when Mila Pfefferberg, a Holocaust survivor portrayed in the film, met Fiennes in costume, she began shaking uncontrollably. "It's him," she whispered. "That's him." Fiennes had become the monster who had terrorized her decades earlier, a testament to his commitment that came with a psychological cost. 3. Spielberg refused to take a salary for the film. When Universal greenlit Schindler's List, they offered Spielberg his standard directing fee, tens of millions of dollars. He declined every penny. "I'll be paid in experience," he told studio executives. "This isn't about money." Spielberg went further, calling any profits from the film blood money and refusing to touch them. Instead, he established the Shoah Foundation with his Schindler's List earnings, an organization dedicated to recording survivor testimonies. When asked about his decision, Spielberg simply said, "There are 6 million stories from the Holocaust and 6 million reasons not to profit from this film." The director, who had become Hollywood's most successful commercial filmmaker, deliberately stepped away from commerce entirely, setting a tone of reverence that influenced every aspect of production. 4. Real Holocaust survivors appear in the film's final scene. The film's powerful epilogue wasn't just cinematic invention. Those aren't actors placing stones on Schindler's grave, they're the actual people Schindler saved and their descendants. Over 120 real Schindler-Juden from around the world traveled to Jerusalem to participate in this scene. They weren't given scripts. No one directed their movements. What we witness is their genuine emotional response to honoring the man who saved them. Some hadn't visited the grave in decades, the production manager noted. Others had never been able to afford the journey to Israel before. Spielberg filmed with minimal crew, standing back as history and cinema merged in a moment of raw remembrance. The actors who portrayed these survivors in the film stood silently off camera, watching their real-life counterparts complete a circle of testimony that transcended the boundaries of filmmaking. 5. Robin Williams called Spielberg daily to lift his spirits. The weight of filming Schindler's List crushed Spielberg emotionally. After capturing scenes of unspeakable horror all day, he would return to his hotel room and collapse. "I would cry and not know why," he admitted. "It wasn't sadness exactly. It was a hollowing out of my spirit." Recognizing his friend's deteriorating mental state, Robin Williams began calling Spielberg every night. For 15 minutes, the comedian would perform improvised routines, telling jokes and doing impressions with one purpose: to make Spielberg laugh. "Robin knew I was struggling," Spielberg later revealed. Those calls were life-preserving for me. He'd say, "You're documenting something important, but you've got to find moments of life too." These daily doses of comedy became the emotional lifeline that allowed Spielberg to return to set each morning and continue the devastating work. 6. The little girl in the red coat was based on a real child. In a film shot almost entirely in black and white, one image stands out: a small girl in a red coat wandering alone through the Krakow ghetto liquidation. What many viewers don't know is that this haunting symbol was inspired by a real child. Roma Ligocka, who was 3 years old during the Krakow ghetto liquidation, really did wear a distinctive red coat. Unlike the character in the film, Ligocka survived the Holocaust. When she watched Schindler's List years later, she recognized herself on screen. "I was that girl," she wrote in her memoir. Spielberg hadn't known her story specifically, but had heard accounts of a child in red from survivor testimonies. After the film's release, Ligocka came forward and eventually published her story. What began as a powerful cinematic device turned out to be historical reality, a coincidence that Spielberg calls the hand of something greater than me guiding this project. 7. The film was almost abandoned multiple times. Schindler's List nearly didn't exist. 3 times during production, Spielberg came close to shutting down the film entirely. The first crisis came during early filming in Krakow, when neo-Nazi vandals defaced the set with anti-Semitic graffiti. "I wanted to walk away," Spielberg admitted. "It felt like we were being warned." The second breaking point occurred when filming the shower scene at Auschwitz. Multiple actors experienced panic attacks, and 2 elderly Holocaust survivors visiting the set collapsed. Production halted for 2 days. The final crisis came during editing, when Spielberg felt the finished film was failing the victims. He called the studio to discuss abandoning the nearly completed project. Each time, it was the Holocaust survivors working as consultants who convinced him to continue. "They told me, 'This is why you must finish. This reaction, this pain, it means you're telling the truth.'" 8. The cast and crew observed complete silence on set. Spielberg established one unbreakable rule on set: absolute silence during filming. No small talk between takes, no joking, no casual conversation. Cell phones, still a luxury in 1993, were banned entirely. Even technical discussions were conducted in whispers. "We were recreating sacred ground," cinematographer Janusz Kaminski explained. Steven wanted reverence at all times. This wasn't just about getting better performances. Spielberg insisted that every person involved with the filming maintained constant awareness of what they were depicting. The silence created a pressure cooker environment where emotions couldn't be diffused through casual interaction. Actors reported feeling physically ill from the sustained tension. Ben Kingsley described the experience as carrying a weight that could never be put down, not even for a moment. The resulting footage captured something beyond acting, a collective emotional state that translated directly to screen. 9. The film's most harrowing scenes were shot in the actual locations where atrocities occurred. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because we're about to reveal how Spielberg made the controversial decision to film in the actual historical locations where Holocaust atrocities took place. The Płaszów labor camp scenes weren't shot on a Hollywood backlot. They were filmed mere yards from where the real camp once stood. The ghetto liquidation was filmed in the streets of Krakow, where it actually happened. Most disturbingly, the production received unprecedented permission to film certain exterior shots at Auschwitz-Birkenau itself, the only commercial film ever granted such access. "These places hold memory in their soil," Spielberg said. The actors could feel it. The decision wasn't without criticism. Some Holocaust scholars argued that recreating scenes of murder at the sites of real mass killings crossed an ethical line, but survivors consulting on the film supported Spielberg's approach. "Truth needs to live in the actual space," one consultant insisted. "Otherwise, it becomes too easy to dismiss as just a movie." 10. The famous "I could have saved more" breakdown wasn't in the script. The film's most devastating scene, Schindler's emotional collapse as he realizes "I could have saved one more," wasn't planned. The script called for a simple goodbye between Schindler and his workers. But when filming began, something unexpected happened to Liam Neeson. "It was our last day of shooting," Spielberg recalled. Liam had been containing this volcano of emotion for months. Without warning, Neeson began to break down on camera. His knees buckled. Real tears flowed. The dialogue about selling his car and Nazi pin to save more lives came pouring out unscripted. Spielberg kept the cameras rolling as Neeson delivered a raw, emotional catharsis that wasn't performance but genuine psychological release. Ben Kingsley, equally surprised, responded authentically. What we witness isn't actors reciting lines but human beings processing the cumulative trauma of telling this story. The scene remains untouched in editing, a pure moment of emotional truth that became the film's emotional core. 11. John Williams initially refused to compose the score when Spielberg approached his longtime collaborator John Williams about scoring Schindler's List. The composer declined. "I need someone better than me for this," Williams told him after watching an early cut. "This is the greatest film you've ever made. It deserves a better composer than I am." Spielberg refused to consider anyone else. For weeks, the two friends reached an impasse until Williams finally sat at his piano with the film's footage. His first attempt became the film's main theme. When Williams played it for Spielberg, the director excused himself from the room. He returned several minutes later, eyes red. "John, you're right," Spielberg said. "The film deserves a better composer than you, but they're all dead." The score, featuring violin solos by Itzhak Perlman, went on to win an Academy Award, with Williams later admitting, "I've written music for over 100 films, but nothing has ever been as difficult as finding the right notes for this one." 12. Ralph Fiennes' portrayal of Amon Goeth was actually toned down from reality. Ralph Fiennes' portrayal of sadistic Nazi commandant Amon Goeth is among cinema's most chilling villains. Yet survivors who knew the real Goeth insist Fiennes' version is actually restrained compared to the historical figure. Ralph's performance captures maybe 20% of the real man's sadism, said one consultant who had been imprisoned at Płaszów. Spielberg made a conscious decision to limit the character's atrocities. "The real Goeth was so monstrous that depicting him accurately would have been unbearable for audiences," Spielberg explained. "We had to pull back." Numerous factual incidents were removed from the script. Goeth personally killing children for sport, ordering his dogs to maul prisoners, and hosting dinner parties on his balcony while prisoners were executed below for entertainment. Even Fiennes felt the restraint necessary. "There's a point where portraying evil becomes pornographic," he noted. "We had to show enough to tell the truth without creating something exploitative." 13. Several crew members quit during the production. The emotional toll of Schindler's List wasn't limited to actors and directors. 17 crew members resigned during filming, unable to continue. 2 camera operators stepped down after filming the ghetto liquidation sequence, citing unbearable psychological distress. A lighting technician quit after witnessing the recreation of selections at Płaszów. "I can't be part of this anymore," he told production managers. "I see these images when I close my eyes." Makeup artists reported nightmares so severe some required medication. The costume department struggled with the ethical implications of recreating Nazi uniforms. Spielberg established an on-set psychologist for the crew, an unprecedented move in 1993. "We weren't just making a movie," recalled production designer Alan Starsky. "We were absorbing trauma daily." Most telling was the pattern of resignations. They typically occurred not during the filming of violent scenes, but afterward, when crew members had time to process what they had helped create. The experience permanently altered many careers, with several crew members never working on Holocaust-related projects again. 14. Actual Holocaust survivors were on set as consultants daily. Every day of filming, Holocaust survivors were present on set as historical consultants. They didn't just provide factual verification, they actively shaped scenes based on their experiences. When Spielberg planned the shower scene at Auschwitz, survivor Mila Pfefferberg explained that women tried to cover themselves with their hands despite the futility. This detail made it into the film. During the Płaszów camp sequences, consultant Poldek Pfefferberg, the real-life basis for a character in the film, corrected the positioning of guards. "They didn't stand there," he told Spielberg. "They stood there where they could see everyone." The survivors' presence created an atmosphere of accountability that influenced every aspect of production. Actors reported feeling witnessed by history. Costume designers consulted survivors about the progressive deterioration of clothing. Most significantly, when Spielberg considered softening certain scenes, it was the survivors who insisted on unflinching depiction. "Make it harder to watch," one told him. "The world shouldn't find this easy to see." 15. The film's ending violates Spielberg's own rule. Steven Spielberg established one unbreakable rule for Schindler's List. He would never show the actual murder of a Jewish person on screen. "I wouldn't put the audience in gas chambers or show executions directly," he insisted. "That crosses a line into exploitation." Yet the film's most disturbing scene, the execution of the female Jewish engineer who corrected construction flaws, appears to violate this principle. The truth? Spielberg filmed the scene but couldn't bring himself to include it. What we see is a compromise. We witness the lead-up and aftermath, but not the actual killing. After multiple edits, Spielberg still found the scene unwatchable. The version in the final film was created just days before release when Spielberg made an unprecedented directing decision. "I decided to fail as a filmmaker rather than fail the truth," he explained. He deliberately broke continuity, mismatched angles, and created a disjointed sequence that forces viewers to look away at the crucial moment, a technique that conveys horror while respecting victims. It remains the only scene in Spielberg's career that he acknowledges as deliberately flawed filmmaking. Schindler's List wasn't just a film that won awards, it fundamentally changed how Holocaust history is taught worldwide. In the years following its release, over 70,000 Holocaust survivor testimonies were recorded through Spielberg's Shoah Foundation. The film is now shown in schools across 55 countries as part of standard curriculum. For Spielberg, this educational impact matters more than any critical acclaim. "If a single person learns this history through the film," he said, "then everything we endured to make it was worthwhile. If you made it this far, you understand why Schindler's List remains one of cinema's most powerful achievements." Like this video, subscribe for more film history, deep dives, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because some stories don't just entertain us, they change who we are.